Happiness is the highest level a Jew can attain. Precisely because it's so high, it is harder to reach than any other spiritual level. So often, a Jew's heart is engulfed in bitterness, which tears him away from the highest level of holiness, the commandment of joy. You can reach joy only when you devote your entire consciousness to that goal. Do whatever may be necessary to grasp it, even though at first it may seem silly. The goal is to be happy. The path is total commitment, and your journey proceeds only when you ignore those who ridicule you. The Holy Mohorash is teaching us a phenomenal thing, page 261 in the original edition, and we have another edition with different pagination. This is for everyone in the universe. Happiness is the highest level. Of course, we all say today, everybody says to each other, I just want you to be happy, 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 which often means pleasured. But if you look at it as really being spiritually fulfilled inside, that is hard, and feeling really good inside, no matter what's going on around you in the sort of range around you. Too often our hearts are in bitterness. Bitterness. There's so many things to be bitter about today. So easy. With social media, with news, with all the inundation we have with the inputs all the time on our phones and our lives and the talk that people do to one another, all the time we're getting inundated. And our past and our futures, what was, what would be, what couldn't be, what should have been. And it says we're only going to get there when we devote our entire consciousness towards that goal. This is not something where I could just put in a little tiny effort. I need my entire consciousness. And it says whatever we need to do to get it, we need to do it. It might seem silly. So my first question for us to reflect on is why does silliness break bitterness? Why does silliness break bitterness? Think of a child for a minute. When a child's really bitter, oh, I can't believe it. Tommy got the toy. His little brother thinks that's not right. He's resentful. He's feeling bitter. He's embittered. So he's just really feeling bittered. And you come along and he's in a cranky, grumpy mood, and the father or the mother or friend tickles him. And it's a very silly move, or makes a dumb joke, or makes a weird face. And all of a sudden he's popped out of that bitterness. Why does silliness break bitterness? You would think like silliness sometimes, if a person's bitter enough, he just gets annoyed and he's like, oh gosh, get away from me. But silliness can break bitterness. And the truth is, if you keep going, like if you take that metaphor a little further and you keep being silly and more silly and more silly, eventually you can crack a smile out of that person. Eventually it cracks through that outer layer of crusted irritation, and a breakthrough to humor, breaks through bitterness. So why is that? Why is that? It's a good question. I don't know the answer. I'm curious what you think the answer is. So that's the first question, just to think about it. First of all, it does. We see that. Then he goes on to tell us something else. Let's go on part 2. The goal is to be happy. The goal is to feel simcha. Not only that, we've heard earlier in these teachings that it's an obligation. And really it's an obligation to ourselves, it's an obligation to other people, and it's an obligation to God to find a way to be in a state of simcha, of inner joy and inner fulfillment, even if I'm in the worst of circumstances. And part of my mission and part of my goal is to find new ways and new innovations to be able to guide myself and others to find this simcha, even in the world of depression, anxiety, OCD, wherever a person's holding, wherever we are, that simcha is available there too. Our teachers teach that, and it's true. It's just there are sometimes greater challenges, which means the accomplishment is even greater. He says here, the path is total commitment. This is what the rabbi teaches. Total commitment, full consciousness. So whatever effort we have, we need to put it fully in there. And the last point is so important. The journey proceeds only when you ignore those who ridicule you. What's a ridicule have to do with it? Because so often there are things we might want to try, we might want to experiment with, we might even want to be silly, but these serious adults around us, or the serious adult in our mind, is telling us that we can't do that, and that's immature, that's not the right timing, it's not good, it's not, it's something that other people might look down on. Well, that ties our hands in our efforts, and then without those efforts in our hands, we're not able to break through to the happy place. So our tool of the day is as follows. What are the ways in which, quote, ridicule stops you? Think both in the internal and the external. There are ways in which inner ridicule, when you ridicule ourselves, and there are ways in which other people in our lives send us ridicule messages, or we feel that they are in any event. So give a little thought to that, and then begin, of course, to think about how to break through. And part two, if you're willing, is what kind of sillinesses historically have worked for you, and break you out of it, or break other people out of it, and how can you apply those? Have a beautiful day.